My name is Monica Lane. Last week I stepped into Crescent Bank just to withdraw $100, not for me, but for Miss Delaney, the elderly widow down the hall who hadn't eaten a full meal in 3 days. Her fridge was mostly empty, and her pension check had been delayed again. $100 could fill her pantry for a week. That was reason enough. I wore my usual coat, the one I'd stitched up twice already this winter. It was clean but faded, just like my thrifted jeans. Still, I walked in with my head high. Downtown Cincinnati that morning was biting cold, and the glass doors of the bank gleamed like mirrors reflecting a world I never quite felt welcomed in. The scent inside was eucalyptus and polished wood, sleek, sanitized. Everyone looked like they belonged. I waited in line, quiet, calm. And then I heard it. "Well, this is a surprise." The voice cut through the air like glass. I didn't need to turn. I knew that tone. Vanessa, my sister. She approached slowly, heels clicking like punctuation marks. She wore winter white, hair pulled tight, lipstick perfect. Her voice was syrupy and sharp. "Still using this branch, Monica?" she said, loudly enough for the room to hear. I stayed silent. I had learned a long time ago that silence could sometimes echo louder than rage. Vanessa smiled wider. "We've updated our client tiers," she said, voice lilting with fake kindness. "We don't really serve walk-ins anymore." Then louder for all to hear, especially not beggars. A few heads turned. A man in a navy suit glanced up. An older woman by the window froze. I felt every eye crawl over me. I still didn't speak. Instead, I touched the scarf at my neck, deep wine red, soft from years of wear. I had bought it years ago with my last $20 on a day I dared to feel proud of just being alive. Now it wrapped around me like armor. Without a word, I stepped out of the line. My boots made no sound as I passed my sister. I didn't flinch, didn't slow. I just left. Outside, the wind hit my face with a strange kind of mercy. In the bank's polished glass, I caught a glimpse of my reflection, head high, back straight, eyes clear. I didn't cry, not anymore. And inside that silence, something deeper moved. Because they thought the insult was the end. But it was only the beginning. That night, my apartment welcomed me like an old friend. The scent of peppermint tea lingered in the air, mingling with the mustiness of books stacked on every surface. I slid off my coat, then gently unwound the scarf and laid it across the table, folding it once, then again. It didn't feel like a shield tonight. It felt like a flag, quiet, defiant. The radiator hissed softly, offering warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. I reached beneath the couch cushion and pulled out an old laptop. The edges were worn smooth from years of use. Its surface bore no stickers, no flash, just function. I opened the lid. The screen flickered once, then twice. I typed a string of characters into the login field, quick, practiced. No hesitation. 3 layers of security. First, the fingerprint scan. Next, a rotating 6-digit code sent through a secure channel. Finally, a passphrase. I typed it slowly. Foxglove never forgets. The screen went dark for half a second. Then the portal opened. Minimalist interface, steel gray background, a single blinking cursor in the bottom corner. No names, no logos. That was intentional. Because in another life, or maybe just a quieter corner of this one, I helped design the architecture for Shellstone Holdings, a financial entity so discreet, even its own partners rarely knew who controlled what. My name wasn't on any paperwork, but my fingerprints were on every line of code. A message popped up, encrypted, expected. "Are you ready?" It was from R.A.-M, my only collaborator. I hadn't heard his voice in years, but the question felt like a steady hand on my shoulder. I stared at the cursor for a moment, then I typed back. "It's time." No explanation, no questions. That's how we'd built it. Clean, professional, purposeful. I sat back in my chair. Once upon a time, my family laughed at me for studying code in the basement, for turning down holiday trips to work through complex trust law scenarios, for dreaming too loud. Vanessa once called me a soft-spoken parasite at a Christmas party. I wasn't even supposed to be there. But I remembered what I whispered to myself afterward, buttoning my coat alone in the snow. One day, they'll see. Tonight wasn't that day. but it was the one that would make it possible. Back then, they didn't see me. Not when I skipped college parties to audit finance lectures online. Not when I worked nights at a 24-hour diner while building trust architecture systems on napkins. They saw a girl who was quiet, unremarkable, disposable. Even my father. He once tossed my resume onto the dining table without glancing at it. "You'd be lucky if a gas station let you wipe the windows," he said. Vanessa was worse. When I told her I was applying for a fintech internship in New York, she laughed over wine and said, "Maybe aim lower, Monica. The world doesn't owe you a desk with your name on it." I didn't argue. I just vanished. Not because I was broken, but because I needed space to build something they could never break. Shellstone Holdings wasn't born out of revenge. It was born out of necessity. R raised the seed funding. I built the structure. We registered it through 5 countries, wrapped it in layers of fiduciary anonymity, and ran it like a ghost ship with a billion-dollar engine. By the end of year 2, I held majority stake hidden behind walls no court could easily penetrate. Vanessa's bank had been courting Shellstone for years. They finally succeeded last quarter. I reviewed the contract myself. I watched her signature appear on the onboarding documents, clueless that the entity she was proudly serving had my fingerprints all over it. The irony wasn't lost on me. They handed her the estate after our father's passing. The will didn't mention me once. Vanessa said it was for my own good. And yet, here she was unknowingly serving the very client I had built from the ashes of their rejection. I leaned forward, pulled up the command panel, and typed, "Show active accounts under Shellstone Holdings." Figures rolled across the screen, precise, unforgiving. $3.5 billion in liquid assets. I could end careers with a click, or disappear again with the same ease, but I wasn't here for destruction. I was here for clarity. For legacy. For the girl who once stood in the snow, whispering to no one but herself. One day, they'll see. And when they do, they'll have to face what they missed while they were too busy laughing. I placed my hands on the keyboard and began typing. Not out of anger, but out of power. The next morning, the sky over downtown Cincinnati glowed pale gold. I wore a navy wool coat, sharp slacks, and a white blouse, clean, crisp, deliberate. My hair was tied back. No makeup, just presence. By 8:45 a.m., I stood at the entrance of Crescent Bank's main branch. The one with tall glass doors and a concierge at the front. A man in a gray suit held the door for me. "Mom," he said with a polite nod. I stepped inside. Same marble floors, same scent of eucalyptus and expensive polish. But everything felt smaller now. Or maybe I had just stopped shrinking. The receptionist greeted me with a rehearsed smile. "Good morning. Welcome to Crescent Bank. How may I?" "I have an appointment," I said calmly, pulling a slim black folio from my bag. "Under Shellstone Holdings." She began typing, then paused. Her screen blinked red. Just then, from across the lobby, I saw her.
Vanessa. Lonnie.
She was laughing with a regional client near the coffee station, face bright with the performance she'd perfected over decades. But the moment our eyes met, her expression shifted. She marched across the marble like a storm cloud in heels. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. "I told you yesterday we're not a charity. Whatever stunt this is, don't." I didn't reply. Instead, I handed the folio to the receptionist, who opened it and scanned the QR code clipped inside. Her eyes widened. "I'll need to get the manager," she said quickly, already picking up the phone. Vanessa snatched the folio from her hands. "Enough. Let's see what my little sister thinks she's playing at." She flipped through the documents, her smirk dissolving line by line. Then she stopped. Her face blanched, her lips parted, but no words came. The branch manager arrived moments later, tall, silver-haired, and composed, the kind of man who's been trained to handle high-net-worth clients without blinking. He took the folio from Vanessa, scanned the page, then looked at his monitor. His tone dropped. "This is a VIP-level authorization," he said to no one in particular. "Primary withdrawal request flagged as sensitive. Shellstone Holdings." He turned to Vanessa. "You're listed as an employee on a partnered subsidiary, did you know?" The room fell silent, not quiet, still, like the air had been sucked out. Vanessa stepped back, eyes darting. "That can't be real," she whispered. "That's some kind of fake." "It's real," I said, meeting her gaze. "You've been working for me. Indirectly, of course. All these years." Behind us, the receptionist locked the front doors. A junior associate dropped her pen. The atmosphere had shifted permanently. The manager's assistant leaned in, whispered something. He nodded. "Withdrawal authorized," he announced. "Amount $3.5 billion. Confirmed. Entity lockdown initiated for audit compliance. Lobby closed until further notice." Vanessa's knees buckled. She stumbled forward. Then she dropped. Right there, in front of the teller windows and marble columns and the staff she had once ruled like royalty. "Monica," she whispered, eyes wide. "Don't do this. Don't ruin everything. You don't know what this will do to me. Please, I have a child. I have a career." I tilted my head. You ruined yourself," I said softly. "All I ever did was step back and let you." Someone behind her gasped. No one moved to help her. Not the staff. Not the clients watching from behind cubicle walls. The manager looked at me. "I'd like to speak to someone from the executive suite," I said, calm as glass. "This doesn't need to be handled on the main floor." He nodded, already pressing the elevator button behind the front desk. As the glass doors closed behind me, I heard nothing. Just silence. But the kind that says everything had just changed. 3 days later, I received a text from Clarissa, my eldest sister by marriage, not by bond. "Family dinner Friday night, just a small gathering, would be nice to see you." It wasn't a peace offering. It was a probe. A test to see where the wind was blowing. I waited a day before replying, then simply wrote, "I'll be there." Friday came with gray skies and the kind of wind that tugged at memory. I dressed deliberately, nothing flashy, just sharp. Tailored navy blouse, slate gray slacks, hair pulled back, no jewelry except a small gold pin my grandfather once gave me. At 6:45 p.m., I stepped into the same restaurant we'd gone to for birthdays and business deals. The scent of rosemary and polished wood hadn't changed, but everything else had. A hostess guided me to the back. A long table waited under soft pendant lights. A small sign rested by the centerpiece, "Reserved." That word used to sting. Now it felt neutral, claimed, not borrowed. I sat at the head of the table, alone for now. At 6:57, the first to arrive was Clarissa. Chanel earrings. Too much perfume. Smile like a knife. "Well, someone's glowing," she said, sliding into the seat opposite mine. "You've been busy, haven't you?" I didn't reply. Next came George, her husband, always a beat behind, always trying to play the peacemaker. "Monica," he said with a tone that tried too hard, "you look grounded. That's a good thing." Then Vanessa arrived. No words. No fake smiles. Just a nod. She took the seat farthest from me. Last was my mother, Eleanor. And she moved slower than I remembered. The sharp edges of her face softened with time, but not her voice. "My girls," she said, as she sat down, as if we were still in matching dresses from a Christmas card 25 years ago. I looked down at my napkin. The waitress came and took drink orders. Clarissa ordered red wine. George copied her. Vanessa asked for water. Mom requested chamomile. Then the show began. "Monica," Clarissa cooed, "something's changed in you. You look serene. Have you taken up meditation? Or maybe just made smart investments?" George chuckled. "Actually, I've been meaning to ask. There's this little project I'm starting. Thought you might want to look it over." My mother leaned in, her hands clasped like she was praying. "We've all been through a lot," she said. "Since your father passed, it's been complicated. We were trying to hold everything together." I counted silently in my head. We, but not once did anyone say. "We were worried about you. And..." Clarissa finally cut to the chase. "Are you okay?" Her voice was light, but her eyes scanned me like a lie detector. I set my glass down. Then leaned forward, voice even. "Did any of you ever wonder what happened to Grandpa's Pennsylvania Land Trust?" The room changed instantly. George blinked. Clarissa's smile slipped. Eleanor's hand tightened around her teacup. Vanessa was the only one to speak. That trust was dissolved years ago, wasn't it? I reached into my bag and placed a slim folder on the table. The word active was stamped in the top right corner. No, I said quietly, it wasn't. And I watched their faces unravel. The following Monday, I didn't go through the bank's front doors. Instead, I turned down a narrow corridor most customers never noticed. A side entrance. Discreet. Designed for private access. A security guard stood waiting. He gave a silent nod, then pressed his thumb to the biometric panel. The door clicked open. The private elevator hummed low as it rose. No music, no mirrors, just brass and breath. It took me straight to the legacy floor where the vaults lived, where real decisions were made, away from the marble smiles downstairs. I stepped out into a corridor lined with stone walls, each etched with names men and women who had shaped this city's financial arteries. And now, apparently mine too. The boardroom door was oak, thick, heavy. I pushed it open. 7 board members sat waiting, most older, most cautious, all watching. I walked in and set the folder down on the polished table. This isn't a courtesy update, I began. This is a legal realignment of trusts, charters, and oversight. They sat straighter. As of last Thursday, the 1954 Pennsylvania Legacy Trust, once chaired by Arthur Lev, is officially merged into the primary holdings of this bank's philanthropic foundation. As the named beneficiary, I now hold majority control. No gasps, just silence. That kind of silence that means everything had just shifted. Robert Templeton, the eldest among them, adjusted his glasses. "You've had this structured for some time, haven't you?" he asked, voice calm. 14 months, I replied. He gave a small nod. "We've been waiting for someone like you since Arthur passed." The moment landed harder than I expected. 15 minutes later, Clarissa burst into the room. Heels loud, hair too perfect. Her smile cracked the moment she saw me standing at the head of the table. "What is this?" she demanded. "Is this a joke?" I didn't answer. I simply slid a sealed envelope across the table. "For you," I said, "from legal." She hesitated, then tore it open. Her face paled line by line. Formal removal. Breach of fiduciary ethics. Misconduct during estate dealings. All documented, all signed. George, seated stiffly beside her, tugged at his collar. "You can't just take everything," he said. "We're your family." I looked at him squarely. "Exactly. And that's why I didn't take everything, just the part you tried to erase." No one responded. I turned back to the board. "Effective immediately, we'll restructure under a revised ethics charter. No one here loses their job today. But the game of nepotism ends now. Titles will match merit. Every community-facing fund will be audited for integrity." A younger board member nodded, visibly relieved. Clarissa tried once more. "You've always held this resentment, haven't you?" I shook my head slowly. "I've always held receipts." Her mouth opened, but this time she had no rebuttal. The vote passed unanimously. No debate. When the room emptied, I remained for a moment. I walked down the adjacent corridor, past the archival vaults, until I found it. A glass plaque. My grandfather's name etched into stone. Right beside it, newly added, was mine. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding what they hollowed out. One signature at a time. That night, the rain arrived quietly, tapping on my windows like an old friend asking to come in. I had changed out of my blazer and heels, pulled on a soft sweater, and lit the single lamp in the corner of my apartment. I was reaching for a blanket when I noticed it in an envelope, slid neatly under my front door. No knock, no footsteps, just presence. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Sharp, controlled, my mother's. I stared at it for a long while. Funny how ink on paper could feel heavier than any boardroom confrontation. I picked it up, my fingers hesitated. Then I opened it. It began simply. Monica. No, my darling, no sweetheart, just my name, a beginning without decoration. "There's something I've carried for a long time," the letter read, "something I should have said before it got this far." She wrote about a summer when I was 10. I'd set up a lemonade stand on the edge of our driveway, made handmade signs, counted sugar packets, planned everything. But Vanessa had accidentally knocked over the jug before I sold a single cup. I had cried. Thought she just didn't like lemonade. But my mother confessed, I saw what she did. I just didn't know how to protect both of you. And in the end, I failed to protect either. She wrote about the months after my grandfather's death, how family finances crumbled quietly, how George had offered structure in exchange for power, Clarissa's fast promotion, the endowment redirected, my name excluded. They made it look like security, she wrote, but it was control, and I allowed it. She ended without asking for forgiveness. I'm not writing this to be excused. I'm writing to ask you not to become what hurt you. I sat in the stillness, no tears. Just the weight of a truth long overdue. The next afternoon, I walked up the old stone steps of our childhood home. I didn't knock. Inside, laughter spilled from the dining room, Clarissa entertaining again. The cadence of performance echoed off marble floors, charming, calculated, rehearsed. I followed the sound. She stood at the head of the table, surrounded by family friends, a few new investors sniffing opportunity. Her hand rested on a glass of wine, smile painted too carefully. Her voice faltered the moment she saw me. Ferks paused mid-air. A cousin from Vermont coughed into his napkin. My mother sat at the far end, pearl necklace clutched too tightly around her throat. Clarissa blinked. Well, this is unexpected. I didn't flinch. I walked to the buffet and set a thick black folder down quietly, like laying a card on a table that only I knew was a full house. If I may, I said, voice even, I'd like to make a small withdrawal. Clarissa laughed, nervous, brittle. Monica, if this is some dramatic cry for attention. No, I interrupted. This is a matter of documentation, not drama. I opened the folder. First, the original trust deed, equal distribution between both daughters, signed by our father. Then, the amendment dated suspiciously 2 weeks before his stroke, same notary, same stamp, but the signature forged. Next, property deeds. The Oregon vineyard, quietly transferred into an offshore holding company under Clarissa's name. Then the STEM Scholarship Fund, meant for girls from disadvantaged backgrounds, redirected into a personal real estate venture. Signed by our mother, but the date. She was in surgery that day, in Zurich. Whispers grew. A laptop was passed to me from a distant uncle. I plugged in the USB drive. The screen flickered. Transaction logs, timelines, emails, quiet facts. Truth. Clarissa's face drained of color. You always needed to be the victim, she muttered. No, I said, locking eyes with her. I just wanted to be seen. My mother said nothing. But she didn't stop me either. I pulled the final page from the folder, a letter in her handwriting, addressed to the family lawyer. I retract all consent to the estate amendments made in my name. Dated 6 weeks ago. I closed the folder. This house, I said, has 2 doors. I looked at Clarissa one last time. Today I walk out the one you didn't build. Then I left. And no one followed. A week later, I sat on a weathered wooden bench beneath an old oak tree. The park was quiet, just past sunrise. The kind of quiet that hums softly, not empty, but full of everything you've waited years to feel. In my lap sat a small, blue savings book, the kind banks used to issue decades ago. Its corners were frayed, the ink faded in places. My grandfather gave it to me when I was 8, after I spent a summer helping him fix broken radios in his workshop. I opened it slowly. Most of the pages were blank now, his deposits long withdrawn, the account itself likely closed. But tucked into the very back, hidden in the inside pocket, was a folded slip of yellowing paper. In his handwriting. For the youngest, because she has the biggest heart. Use it when they forget who you are. I closed my eyes and exhaled. It wasn't the money I'd withdrawn last week. Not really. It wasn't the trust, or the property, or the titles they tried to hide. It was my name. My loyalty. My love. I had pulled them back from the people who wasted them, and I reinvested them quietly, intentionally, into something that could grow. Across the lawn, just beyond the low iron fence, stood a modest building of steel and glass. A brushed silver sign marked the front. The Monica Lane Foundation. A nonprofit. Funded by legacy. focused on women in STEM. My name, for once, stood without apology. The silence I used to dread had transformed. It no longer felt like isolation. It felt like interest earned on every moment I stayed quiet, watched, waited. My phone buzzed once in my coat pocket. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. A small bird landed near my feet, head tilted, just watching me. It didn't startle, didn't beg for crumbs. It just sat there,